Welcome to a video from thedigital.com. This is the new Korg Multipoly Native. Really pleased to be able to bring you this video because I'm a big fan of the Multipoly. I've got my Multipoly here. This is the native version that runs on Windows and Mac as plugin or as a standalone version. And I hope, as you heard in the beginning there, the video, it's a really interesting, powerful, versatile synth. A bit daunting when you first look at it, but it's actually quite fun and simple to get into. This is, like I said, this is the native version that I'm looking at here. All the patches that I demonstrated at the beginning, I created on the hardware one and just imported in. So there's no difference between them. So you can design them on the native and export them and bring them into the hardware and vice versa. That's actually one real nice thing. I've got it running on my laptop as well. So every now and again I fire up this, and if I've got a minute or so, you can do a bit of sound design and then bring them back to your hardware later. So in this video, I'm going to explore some of its features. We'll look at things like wavetables, oscillators, some of the filter options, syncing, modulation, sequencing, that kind of thing. And I'll also play some sound examples as I go along as well. Incidentally, I've got loads of these sound packs available already. So if you head to thedigital.com, you can see on the links, on the download links there, there's multiple sets. I've got some premium paid ones. I've got some free ones as well. Some of the sounds you hear I haven't released yet, and they'll be in future packs. Okay, so let's just break down what this is. This is a virtual analog modeling synthesis, I think Korg like to call it. So it's an analog modeling synthesizer. It's made up of 4 layers, and each of those layers can be made up of 4 oscillators. There's 2 filters. There's noise, sync, ring mod, cross modulation. So the other thing that it does, as well as traditional analog modeling, is it actually models characteristics of certain classic synths. So as well as the oscillators, we'll come and look at oscillators that can have different types of oscillators. The filters also model different types of synths as well. So we've got Minimoog, Profit, MS-20, SEM, that's like a sequential SEM filter. So they actually model those synths, and they sound different. Same with the VCA as well. The VCAs model the classic synths as well, as do the envelopes. So here's on the VCA, you can see we've got these classic synths that we're modeling, and if we go to the envelopes, we've got the different curves from the different kind of classic synths. So you can build up these classic synth sounds, but the great thing about them is you can mix and match them. So you could have a sequential filter go into a Moog filter with the envelopes of an Odyssey, with a wavetable that, you know, from a DW8000. So you can bring all these together. I think that's where the idea of this comes in. So we've got 4 layers, and each of those layers is built up of 4 oscillators, 2 filters, and multiple envelopes. So, of course, the inspiration for this comes from the monopoly, the classic Korg monopoly, which is a sort of monophonic, paraphonic synth. So it had 4 oscillators and a single filter. So you could play a chord, because the 4 oscillators could be, as you play the keys, it can pick up each one of those keys, but you still got that single filter. Or you could have it as 4 stacked mono sounds. But the interesting thing with that was that you can actually do a rotate feature. So I've got an example here. The interesting thing on the monopoly is so the first note you press would play oscillator 1, the second would play oscillator 2, and you could choose the different waveforms of those 4. So you could go up, and tunings as well, so you could get some really interesting effects. The multipoly has that because it's got layer rotate. And layer rotate, what that does is it will go between the 4 layers. So I mentioned we've got 4 oscillators, but we've got that times 4 layers. So you can have 4 completely different programs, and it will switch through them. So you can hear it layer switching through. So I've got 4 layers there that it's switching between. So let me just play a chord. And the monopoly had this interesting thing with those 4 notes is it could actually switch between those 4 oscillators. So when you heard the first key down, it would play oscillator 1, second key oscillator 2, and so on. So that and different tunings and different oscillators. So you could have a square wave and then a pulse width, and then another square wave but an octave higher and things like that. The multipoly has that 4-layer rotate, and here we give an example. So that's playing layer 1. And so you can hear that switching through the layers. So you can create some really interesting effects. It sounds a bit gimmicky at first when you hear it like that, but you can create some subtle changes. Great for string sounds where you could have 4 different string sounds and it just changes slightly each time to give you sort of that warm feeling. So that was the monopoly had that as a mono synth. And yeah, Korg have brought that into here, but it's a lot more than that to be honest. Okay, so let's start with the oscillators. So I'm going to switch around a few different sounds. And in fact, what I'm going to do is start with a template. And there are some built-in templates in here to sort of get you on the right track. So all those things like the envelopes and the filters and everything all switch to the right format for you, or the right option for you. These are all built-in ones. There's a couple that I've actually created my own. I've created my own OBX type one, or you could choose a mini Moog, or you could choose an Odyssey. I'm just going to go to a basic init performance. Okay, so here you can see we've got a single oscillator on at the moment. So by the way, I'm controlling this from a hardware multipoly, but everything here is from the native version. So we've got a sawtooth there. Let's have a look at the waveforms we've got. You can choose so sawtooth, pulse, triangle, a saw pulse combination, saw triangle combination. These detuned saws are my favourite, to be honest. We'll come back to them. And sharp fin. Now, some waveforms don't take any modifying, like the sawtooth. I've got the filter wide open, by the way, if you're wondering why it sounds bright like that. We'll come to filters in a sec. If I go to pulse, you can adjust the pulse width on there till it disappears completely. Interesting thing as well, when I was recreating some Prophet 5 sounds, when I was looking at how the Prophet, how some of the presets were created, they fade in some oscillators, and I was wondering how they do it, because they weren't using the volume, and they were using this technique of having no width at all, and then bring it in like that to bring it in. So it's quite an interesting technique. So as well as that control over it, you've got LFO that can control it. And when we go to LFOs, you'll see we've got all these down here. So we've got an LFO for each filter, an amp, a pitch, and a PWM. But actually, they can be used for anything. But they're sort of hardwired for like the PWM. But you could use the filter LFO to control that, or you could use an envelope. And that's one of the great things at multipoly is you can start mapping these modulation controls. But for now, we'll just stick with as it is, so you can hear that. And we've got different. You can see all the different options we've got here. So loads of modulation options on there. So that's on PWM. On the, we've got same thing with triangle. And then the saw pulse uses that same option again. Let's just set that to 0. But you can blend between them. So you could use an envelope for that, or mod wheel. This is a good example of being able to route wherever you want to, whatever you want. So let's say I want this blend to be controlled by mod wheel 100%. It's also controlling the pitch, but you can turn that off. So that's an example of what you can control. So maybe I didn't want it to be controlled by that. I could control it by poly aftertouch. And I've got my key stage connected over here. So that's another example. Another waveform, yeah, we can go to between saw and a triangle, pulse and a triangle. And then these two are my favorite, these detuned saw. This saves you an oscillator effect. If you want to get that detuned sound where you previously would get two oscillators slightly detuned, this has that in one oscillator. So you could have 4 oscillators slightly detuned, giving you sort of the effect of 8 oscillators. So there's our single oscillator, and of course we can do the pitch and the tuning, octave and everything else on that, and transposing. We've got a pitch envelope we could apply to it. So if we go down to our envelopes, there's a pitch envelope. Let's give that a bit of initial pitch. So we've got a bit of pitch envelope on that one. So the second oscillator, we could also chuck in a double saw, a detuned saw. No pitch on that one, but we could have a little bit of detune, and we could build it up with multiple layers, so we could have a bit of pulse in the background. So you can straight away you've built up those rich sounds. Let's go back to oscillator. Let's just focus on oscillator 2 for a sec. As well as those classic ones, you've got a full set of wavetables, and you can import your own wavetables as well. I've got a couple that are on the digitallifestyle.com. You can go to wavetables.lol, and there's thousands of wavetables on there. These are the same as the mod wave. The wavetables allow you to, for example, a triangle wave, and as you adjust the position, you can hear it switching smoothly between the different wavetables. If you turn off the cross width down, you'll hear it go directly through. So that can give you some interesting effects. Like how it's smooth. And you can modify the position of that. But then when you look here, these are all the wavetables that are built in. So there's absolutely tons of them. Some are really good, very digital, which is great complement to the analog oscillators. So a great thing you can do with that one is apply an envelope to it. So let's say that pitch envelope, which we were talking about before, I don't use it for pitch. I'm going to use it for this wavetable. So if we go back to my pitch, to get some nice effects like that. There's some really good ones in there. There's some like vocal ones. So I really like those ones, and there's tons of them on there, and there's some really good ones, and you've got complex ones, bell-like ones, analog synth, so digital one there, but you've also got the classic DW8000 ones in there as well, and the DW6000. So that's effectively where the mod waves inspiration comes from, the DW8000. You can hear it stepping through them if I make the transition down to the crossfade transition to 0. So these are single cycle waveforms, a bit like a very low memory version of a sample. But you can get some really interesting effects on there. So that's one of the oscillator types. I could do a whole video on them, and I have. The third type I'm least familiar with is the wave shaping ones. So this is using sort of the West Coast additive sort of method using triangles. But you get some really interesting sounds out of that. Almost FM type things. So it's almost FM, and you get all these different wave shapers. And I think I'm gonna have to do a full video on this. I haven't done one on this because I'm still learning this. But you get some really interesting shapes and sounds before you even get to the filter. 3 different synthesis types on there. So what you're going to need from there is some filters. So I'll switch back to a basic waveform here. We've got 2 filters that can run in serial or in parallel. And you can send individual oscillators to either of the filters. So what I found that has done is it's given me the ability to almost split that one layer into 2 layers, so that you can have 2 oscillators going through one filter, 2 going the other, with their own envelopes and everything else, and so you can almost create like 8-layer synth sounds. So anyway, here's filter 1. So this is in the monopoly mode. This is the hardest thing to demonstrate. People in videos have accused me of having the filter too high, and some people have said the filter's too low when I've been doing it. So perhaps I'm about right. But if I just give us a bit of a more interesting sound, maybe a subtle detune. So that's the monopoly filter. The mini mode filter, we've got the Prophet 5 filter, MS20. You can hear a difference as well, can't you? A lot of resonance on that one. We've got MS20 high pass, and my favourite one is the SEM one. I think I really like this one. You get the Native Prophet 5 sounds. And then you've got these other ones. We've got band pass, low pass, the ladder ones. The band pass is quite good. For creating effect, sort of synth effects when you put some noise through there. You heard that with the drums actually. I did at the beginning. And we've got a multi-filter as well, and the multi-filter has 2 of various combinations, and you can customize your own. So you can have a low pass going through a high pass, or a high pass going through a band pass, and so you can create these combination of filters like that. So you've really got some interesting effects on there you can see. So low pass, high pass, and you can sort of crossfade between them. So that's one of the filters. And then in parallel or serial mode, so it's currently in serial and it's switched off at the moment. And by the way, you can switch the filters off completely. and you can still hear the sound. You don't have to have the filter on. So now let's flick straight to we've got another filter which has got exactly the same combinations as well. So I'm going to switch this into parallel mode now. So we've got, let's switch on a second oscillator, and I'm going to use a DW8000. Let's just switch that off for a sec. It's got a bit of electric piano type set waveform there. So I'm going to switch oscillator 2 to be filter B. But let's say to make it sound different, I'm going to switch it to a high pass. Actually, I'm going to leave it as a sawtooth, so I'm going to give you sort of that high pass string type sound. Right, there you go. So there, I've also got that string machine type effect, type high pass string. If we go to our other oscillator, that's just going through oscillator, we're going through filter 1. But it means we can have different effects on here. So let's put on, let's change that to a multi-poly filter, and we'll have some filter LFO. So straight away you can hear now I've got two filters running. So maybe I'll leave that one at 0, and we'll have the filter envelope on that one. Turn that cut off down. We've got the filter envelope. Let's give that a bit of slower attack. There we go. We're in mono mode at the moment. We could switch it to stereo, so I could pan them slightly apart. Now let's have some on filter B. We can apply some LFO. We've got featability. And then we can go to our amp envelope. Let's just get a bit of release on that. So you can hear it sounds like 2 distinct layers now. So a nice effect on there with the filters. Now what I didn't show you was we've got some modulation, so we'll have a look at that in a sec. But there's filters anyway. Go on a slightly different track now. Let's switch back to oscillators. I'm going to do something slightly. I want to go back to initial performance and just quickly show some of the modulation text. So we've got 2 oscillators now. Straight away you can hear they're not perfectly, when you put that second one, because of this component model sort of technology, this drift, you have got that sort of analog effect to it straight away. Okay, so let's try the sync on it, which is one of my favorites. So I switched the sync on. We're in single mode, just these 2 syncs. We can do them as well. Everything stays the same. If I start to take this tuning, in sync mode, the phase of this one is locked to that one, so it always stays the same pitch and you get that interesting effect. But what is more interesting, if you get a good pitch envelope, let's go back to our pitch envelope. Let's have a bit of a sweep. Straight away you can hear you've got that classic sort of sync sound on there. If I reduce the sustain down, put the decay up a bit. There you go, you can hear that. And the curve of that, we could have a Minimoog's envelopes on it. That's sync, and we can do it in double mode as well. So 1 and 2 sync, and 3 and 4 sync as well. So you can have double effect on there. We do some cross modulation. And if we put that mixer, we can actually turn oscillator 1's volume down. So you can just hear oscillator 2's. And again, we've got a double mode on that one as well. So you can get some interesting effects on there. And we've got ring modulation as well. That's just using pitch modulation. I mentioned this component measuring technology here is where you control that. It's not randomness. Dan Phillips from Korg explained it on the podcast we did with him. It's modeling each oscillator separately so that they all have each oscillator has its own characteristics. So it makes sound a bit random. It's not. It's modeling the way that analog synth would work, and you can just adjust those amount of drift on there. You can hear it on there, can't you? You can hear that beating. So that's completely digital, and then all the way up as well. And I'd prefer it somewhere in the middle. You can build in those subtle randomnesses if you want to, using the LFOs to make a bigger sound. So let's have a look at motion sequencing now, and I've got a probably more extreme example. So here's a drum kit, a drum machine I created using 4 layers, and you can see I'm using some of, not all the layers, all the sequences, but some different sequences to get all different effects. So that's the kind of thing you can do with it. Well, let's go right to basics, just so I don't confuse you. Here we go. Here, so a single layer, a single sound. So what you've got here is a timing lane. So the sequence can go through different timings if you want. You've got a pitch lane, so you can do different pitches, shape. I'll come back to that. And you've got 4 sequences that can modify something else. So this sequence isn't a traditional sort of like sequence you can just press record and play a little tune and it'll just keep repeating. It doesn't quite work like that. It's more about changing parameters and things like that. Oh, it does do the pitch as well. And if you think on something, a lot of synths allow you to record movement, and this is exactly what it does on here. You can record, specifically on the hardware one, you can record the filter cutoff change, and it'll put that in the timing on there. Doing it on here is slightly different, but it's the same thing. So here you can hear we've got a simple sound. So let's say I wanted a 4 note and I wanted to go to play 4 down and then 3 notes up, because it's relative. So if I press C, it will go. You can hear it like that, and then I could go 5 and let's say 12. And it's going to continue playing the C. What is really nice on this is you can copy and paste. So you can copy that step and paste it there. So and you can use the mouse to drag up, and you can get some random effects as well. So let's make that a bit more musical. I'll make that to 12, and I think that last one's probably a bit low. So let's just give that like that. So that's the basics of that sequence in there. In the terms of the timing lane, you notice it's repeated over and over again as well. You don't have to do that. You can have it to repeat twice. So you can have it as a musical effect. So if I just say once. So that's on a single repeat, which is quite good. So maybe you could actually use each one of these steps to create an envelope, and you can make it adjust the filter, and it could go up and down, and then fade off. You've got whatever you want on there. So let me show you that now. These are the sequence lanes, and you can use these for anything. So let me put some values in here. I'm just going to have some slightly incremental values going up like that. Okay, now at the moment that doesn't do anything. If I go into the filter, turn the cutoff down, and apply sequence A, and you can choose the intensity of that. So you can see that here, that now we've got very low values, so what we should do is have some higher values. So you can hear it smoothly going between those levels, and if you look here, this is where the native version is really good, because it shows you the levels. You can see it smoothly transitioning between those levels. Now you've got some options on that. We're using a linear transition. We could turn that off, and you'll see it do a stepped transition. And you can see it like that. The other thing we can do is use the shape. There's the shape. Everything's on at the moment, so we're not going to hear any differences. But we've got all these fancy shapes to this saw down one. So the first thing, the level is going to be at 100. It's going to go down and then up, and then we could have one that goes like that, and we can have a double one and a triple one. So that's an example, and this is an effect I use for that sort of Berlin School ratcheting effect. I've got a full video on that actually, so you can watch that where I can trigger on things. But anyway, so you can see it's applying that level now, and we could have another one here doing something totally different. So maybe I would say the resonance is going to be affected by lane 2, sequence lane B. Okay, and then in terms of timing, and this is where you can get clever now, that maybe when you want that 4-note pattern on this, we want that to the whole thing, so I can just drag that over here. So you see those 4 are going there, or I could go 5. It doesn't have to match up. And in terms of timing, I can say I want the first note to actually be a quarter note, and then I want a 32 and a 32, and then carry on. So maybe I can do. So you can create some interesting stuff like that. And of course, what you can do is if you just want the same time on each beat, you could actually do it like that. So here's a different example. This is when I did one of the demo videos. So there's a phonic sequence with the shape lane. And let's see what it's doing. So filter B is being controlled by sequence B, and filter A is being controlled by A. Here's another example. This is 2 sequences running at the same time, just using pitch. And if I go to the percussion ones that I've done, these use all 4 layers. So if I just, there you can hear that sort of hi-hat type one, and you can, this sequence lane A is actually controlling an envelope. Where you can see that sequence lane A is actually altering the release time on an envelope. So you're not, that's what I was saying earlier, you're not tied things by fixed positions. You can just have whatever you want. So that open hi-hat is being done by that sequence value. There, I'm opening up the, it's on this one, isn't it? Sequence A. I'm opening up that. So if I put that higher, you'll hear it. You'll see that stay open longer. So exactly that. Now, to get some of these interesting effects like that, what you can do on the filters is, as well as the filters being triggered by a note on, you can actually get them triggered by something else. So in my case, on this one, say, the filter is being triggered by the step pulse, which is the constant pulse from the sequencer. And that's what's triggering the filter. So that's why the filter keeps playing and keeps triggering that. You can hear that. And I've got the filter and the amp envelope being controlled by that sequence A. So in fact, the filter is on a standard pulse. The amp envelope is being controlled by the amount in sequence A, and sequence A is that amount. So basically, I'm just pulsing it, and then every now and again muting it effectively. So there you can see the pitch going through it as well. So you get some really complex sounds from using these motion sequencers. It sounds complicated, but actually when you get into it, it's just thinking, well, what do I want changed by time? And you can use the motion sequencer as your time. And like I said, you can even create a multi-stage envelope, 32, 64. I think you can have 64, there are steps on it. So you can have a 64 step envelope on your filter, for example. You've got two filters, and then you can buy them as layers. So some of the features we've got each layer can have its own MIDI channel if you want, or you can have it combined. And there's a chord mode where you can set a chord up. So I think you can enter the chord from MIDI. We can. Right, so I've just done that. So I played the chord on the keyboard, learnt it, and you can see how it's mapped that. Or you can manually set those up. So chord mode's quite interesting, because that's what the Mono Poly had. So the things we've got on here, we've got, let's turn chord mode off. We've got detune mode as well. And you've got the allocation on here. We've got an arpeggiator. Let's just turn that down for a sec. Different modes. Nice arpeggiator. The only limitation of arpeggiator is that it arpeggiates all four layers at the same time. It would be great if that was an arpeggiator per layer, like it is on the Mob Wave, so that you could have an arpeggiator sound like that and a nice string pad running behind it. You have to do some sort of techniques, and I've got a few techniques for that, and you see on some of the other videos to get around that. But hopefully Korg can address that with a future update. That would be really nice if you could break that out. So we've got an arpeggiator on there. We've got chaos as well. So the chaos is the physical pad that's on the keyboard. If I go on my Mob Wave, you can see I can control it like that, and you can use it for multiple things. If you haven't got a Mob Wave or a multi-poly, these receive on MIDI, so you can control this from MIDI parameters as well. But I've used it for things like controlling the filter. Let's see if I can find an example. Okay, there's one that I've created. So let's see. So I've set the filter controller, but the Chaos Pad can be used for anything. So you could use it to control filter, effects, you can control sustain, whatever you want it to control, you can map that on there. Talking of effects as well, each layer has its own effect. Let's just take a quick look at that. Effects I really like. Let's go turn everything off. So you can, first of all, there's a master reverb with per layer that you can send through, and there's all these different presets you can choose. If I turn that off for now, so we go back to a dry sound, we've got a pre-effects where you can have a compressor, which I like, but there's also vintage distortion. And there's even things like a Waveshaper. Gives you an FM sort of sound again. We've got guitar ramp. So that's the first section, and there's an EQ on there, that's per layer, and there's a master EQ. You've got a mod section, which is give you. So that's we've got a chorus. Let me just. I'm gonna make this into a nice, make that polyphonic. You can hear the chorus. And we've got all these different ones on there. The choruses are really nice. Do you like them? Especially get a nice string sound on there. You get some nice choruses with that. And all these are editable, the parameters as well. There's a rotary speaker as well, which sounds really good, which you can then control through the say the mod wheel or a foot pedal or the Chaos Pad or the different speeds. It sounds pretty good with the organ sound. So you've got some nice effects on there. Let's go with a modern chorus, and then we've got multiple delays, a tape delay. It sounds pretty cool when you start messing with the time as well, which is something else you can use the motion sequence. It sounds pretty good messing with the time as well, and you can use the Chaos Pad and things. You can start messing out with it. It's really good because that is something that you can control from all these different controllers. So you can even, poly aftertouch can affect the key, the release, the speed of a tape head or something like that. It's really good sounds on there. You've got some nice delays. So you've got, and then you can, like I said, you can combine that with a main reverb and a bit of EQ as well. I should mention as well, I haven't really got time to go through every feature. The motion sequence can do things like tune to, you can have it so it's set to a key. So the pitch is set to a key, fit to scale. So you can have it set to C major or D minor or set to key of moll. And you can do that with the motion sequencer as well. Okay, I'm going to go do some sound demos to kind of finish off. You get this from the Korg shop. If you've got a multiplier, there's a discount code you get through Librarian. So I actually use this quite a lot, especially in the DAWs. So I tend to use the physical device for working out the sounds, getting the part right, and then when I'm happy with that, then I sort of hand that over to the virtual one, and then go back to the synth then for the next part. But you get it from the Korg shop. So I'll include a link in the video on the pricing of that. If you go look at example sounds, well, you can see I've got 600 odd performances in here now, many which I've created. I've recreated the Monopoly, the Odyssey, Gen SX 1000, a Prophet, the whole set of Prophet sound, including some of the presets that were on the Prophet 5. I've modelled those, so these are supposedly like the original ones. I left them quite dry because the original doesn't have built-in effects. I've got some DD8000 sounds I'm just starting to work on, but you can see there's so much in there. The presets on it are really good, and they really give you some good examples of how to get going with the synth. Some great ones like that. So here's one of my favorites, because this is a great example of the sequencing action, and you can use a chaos. So some great sounds like that. Really good presets on there. That's my look at the multipoly Native. Go to digitallifestyle.com if you've got a Native or the hardware version, and you can download loads of these synths sets. I've got free versions, premium versions, plus sets for other synths as well. I've got loads of tutorials on the YouTube channel as well, how to do the motion sequencing and everything else. I haven't really gone into detail on enough of it probably, but this would be a 4, 8, 10-hour video if I did go into too much detail. It all works in the DAW. You can sync it up. You've got the full librarian, the editor, and play modes as well. It's a really nice synth, very rich, very complex, but easy to get started really, because you can break it down to simple layers and then expand on it. Thanks for watching this video. Hope you like it. Please like and subscribe if you do, and I'll see you on the next one.